Hello, and thank you for attending this session, Building Awareness of Open Pedagogical Practices to Advance the Cause of Openness on Your Campus. I'm Christina DeVoe, the English and Communication Librarian at Temple University, a large urban state-affiliated university located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I also lead our library's open education group, which includes providing outreach to the campus community about open education, as well as managing our OER Incentive Award Program, the Textbook Affordability Project. Basically, I'm a research and instruction librarian who is invested in open education and excited by the possibilities open pedagogy offers, both for my own instructional efforts, as well as my ongoing outreach engagement with faculty. This session is oriented towards those individuals who work closely with faculty and provide varying levels of assignment design support, such as librarians and instructional designers. Specifically, I'll discuss what open pedagogy is and its connections with critical information literacy. I'll offer what I see as the benefits and challenges of an open pedagogical approach, highlighting some renewable assignment examples. And I'll offer some suggestions for initiating effective conversations with faculty about open pedagogical practices. So let's get started. Open pedagogy is often described in terms of multiple evolving definitions, as a series of practices, a learning style, or even a state of mind. Elder provides, I think, the most straightforward definition of open pedagogy, saying that it is, quote, a series of practices which involve engaging students in a course through the development, adaptation, or use of open educational resources, end quote. I think, though, this definition needs some unpacking to better help understand the practices aspect and its significance. Keeping in mind that open pedagogy is part of the broader open education movement, one major aspect of open education asks not what you teach with, but how you teach. For example, when thinking about open, Bali encourages us to first ask, what are we opening? How are we opening it? For whom and why? She points out that open pedagogy is a person who teaches and makes much of what they do open, including possibly a focus on content, a focus on teaching, a focus on student work being public, and a focus on students networking in that public. For Cronin, who calls it Open Educational Practices, or OEP, it is, quote, the use, reuse, and creation of OER, as well as collaborative pedagogical practices employing social and participatory technologies for interaction, peer learning, knowledge creation and sharing, and empowerment of learners, end quote. Joining together, Bali, Cronin, and Jangiani contend that as we engage in these open practices, we start to see a shift in their application, which the authors plot across a broad continuum of 3 dimensions. First, practices that move from content-centric to process-centric, placing a greater emphasis on the journey of learners and their interactions with one another in the creation of content, rather than the content for its own sake. Second, practices that move from teacher-centric to learner-centric, placing a greater emphasis on the active development and creation of content by the learner, for themselves or for the community in which they are participating. And finally, practices that move from primarily pedagogical to primarily social justice focused. So less emphasis on teaching for teaching's sake and more toward practices which attempt to address and redress economic, cultural, and/or political injustices. Now, Bali, Cronin, and Jangiani's continuum has a bit of fluidity as these practices may continue to incorporate pieces of each dimension. So how does this connect with critical information literacy? Well, some instruction-oriented librarians viewing this recording may be familiar with the 2015 document, Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education, which was intended to open up the definition of information literacy a little more so that librarians, faculty, and other institutional partners can reignite conversations about what it means to use, and more importantly, in this era, produce information so that they can collaboratively redesign instruction sessions, assignments, courses, and even curricula. The four components that make up the definition of information literacy: reflective discovery, production and value, creating new knowledge, and ethical participation, reflect that process-centric nature. And the 6 frames included in the framework reflect a learner-centric nature with their corresponding knowledge practices and dispositions, which provide increased opportunities for a social justice focus that encourage a bit of discomfort and struggle among learners as they increase their own understandings. Now, critics of the ACRL framework argued that there is too much focus on teaching the individual learner a range of skill sets to succeed in academia, in preparation for the world beyond, which encompasses a competitive, rapidly changing economic environment. Critical approaches to information literacy then invite all of us, according to Toole, to, quote, co-investigate the political, social, and economic dimensions of information, including its creation, access, and use, end quote. Drawing from the philosophy of critical pedagogy and scholars like Freire, Giroux, and Hooks, critical information literacy extends merely beyond learning to use library resources and encourages engagement with issues of the social construction of knowledge, as well as issues of intellectual property, copyright, information security, privacy, and freedom of information. And it aims to develop a critical consciousness in students around information so that they might take control of their own lives and learning. As active agents in their own learning, students need a community with which to explore their information privilege, test and contest ideas, and create meaning. When students see themselves as authentic contributors to an ongoing conversation, instead of as mere consumers of information, their level of motivation increases. Because of their close working relationships with faculty surrounding information literacy instructional efforts and assignment design support, librarians have keen insights into departmental culture and curricula. For librarians, critical approaches to information literacy and the ACRL framework can be a bridge that enables advancement from faculty discovery and adoption of open educational resources to implementation of innovative open pedagogical practices. Considered together, critical information literacy and open pedagogical practices provide an opportunity for librarians and faculty to engage students in authentically creating and sharing new knowledge while critically evaluating information systems in the process. If you engage regularly in information literacy initiatives with faculty, you have a clear opportunity to also incorporate conversations and ideas around open pedagogical practices. Now, before getting individuals overly excited, I think it's important to acknowledge that, like any approach, an open pedagogical one has some perks and pitfalls which need to be considered. Some real challenges include the amount of upfront work and time needed to adequately scaffold learning opportunities. For some faculty and even students, an open pedagogical approach may feel less like teaching because it's a shift from sage on the stage to guide on the side, placing more power and control in the hands of students. And both parties may struggle with that initially. And because open pedagogical approaches tend to focus more on the overall process than necessarily the end product, faculty may be challenged with how to assess these moments. For example, Would reflective narratives be more appropriate? Students may also question how they are being assessed. But there are clear benefits to this kind of approach, some of which have been mentioned earlier. Affordability certainly comes into play as students are using, adapting, or creating OER. This ensures that faculty are providing an equitable learning experience for their students. It also promotes academic freedom on the part of faculty, with opportunities to address and redress injustices while engaging students in active learning. So how exactly does this approach bear out? One kind of open pedagogical approach is the design of renewable assignments. So what's a renewable assignment? Well, let's start with what it's not. Oftentimes in many courses, students produce work in isolation that is submitted to their professor for a grade and then never really thought about again by the student or the professor. The final paper or research paper is an example of this. David Wiley even calls these types of assignments disposable because they are, both metaphorically and often quite literally, tossed aside once they are completed and graded. Perhaps a little harsh, but student and even faculty investment in them might not be as enthusiastic as desired, and they may not leave a lasting impression. Renewable assignments, however, add value to the world, contributing to the public good. These types of assignments challenge the notion that students must passively consume knowledge in a Freudian banking model sense, and instead encourage students to actively participate and contribute to the larger knowledge commons. Students are more likely to invest effort and thought with renewable assignments because they perceive that the products of their work will endure long after the class is completed and will be valued by a wider audience. Wiley and Hilton argue that there is like a spectrum between disposable and renewable assignments, as demonstrated by this chart. Some may be familiar with assignments that are somewhat similar to renewable assignments, such as authentic assignments or constructivist assignments, which have that project-based learn by doing connection, in which students are asked to do the kinds of things in the course of study that it's preparing them to do in the real world. Renewable assignments move beyond authentic and constructivist assignments. So what are some examples of renewable assignments? Well, student-composed glossaries or bibliographies. Students can identify key terms or definitive sources relevant to the course, writing definitions or summaries. Over time, these could grow, be organized into themes, and shared from class to class. Student-created learning objects. And students can design or redesign ancillary materials for the course that they and future students can use, like question banks, study guides, discussion questions, problem sets, tutorials, infographics, videos, podcasts, games, you name it. Over time, this could be structured so that students create objects centered around concepts that challenged them or concepts they believe the next cohort of students should know. Student-curated exhibits. Students can utilize archival materials to produce public-facing outputs, like exhibits, be they physical or digital, with accompanying captions or metadata, fostering connections with the past and or local communities while contextualizing course topics and themes. It is important, though, to be mindful of the copyright status of archival materials. For example, just because something is in an archive does not necessarily mean it is out of copyright or that the copyright is even known. Student-produced newsletters, journals, zines, timelines, you name it. Students can collaboratively publish periodicals, engaging in peer review and editorial processes. Topics could address countercultural topics or underrepresented voices from less frequently heard spaces. Zines and zine culture, for example, are kind of situated within a genealogy of resistance and community mobilization. So students producing zines are encouraged to see themselves as part of this history. Students remix textbooks or anthologies. Students can compile out of copyright works or compose their own chapters alongside student-produced introductions, annotations, or bibliographies. Student-edited Wikipedia articles. Students could edit existing or create new Wikipedia articles focused on course themes and topics. Having students contribute content to existing Wikipedia articles is an easy way to engage with the Wikipedia community, while giving students experience with the publishing process. Also, it helps with addressing issues related to visibility and invisibility, misrepresentation, verifiability, neutral point of view, bias, and information. Creating new articles from scratch does not have to be the ultimate goal, though. Students can also contribute to Wikipedia by adding citations or external references to an article, adding Wikimedia content to an article, uploading public domain and/or Creative Commons licensed content to Wikimedia, or translating articles. Students can also participate in or organize editathons. There are a number of openly licensed published books, OER in press, and websites that provide additional ideas and case studies. These are just a few I recommend. Okay, let's switch gears now to highlight some strategies for initiating effective conversations with faculty about open pedagogical practices. So who should you reach out to? Well, know that some faculty may be more primed to an open pedagogical approach than others. If you have an OER incentive award program, reach out to your past awardees to determine if any of them might be interested. If they have previously adopted or adapted OER, they may be willing to try an open pedagogical approach. Perhaps you are aware of faculty who already engage in authentic or constructivist assignments. They're more than halfway there, so to speak. So why not engage them? Or perhaps you know faculty invested in the scholarship of teaching and learning, or simply faculty who regularly iterate their assignments semester after semester. Try reaching out to them. In thinking about the ways you can frame the conversation, draw upon your existing information literacy outreach expertise and techniques. Firstly, consider the goals of the conversation. Some of the ways you can frame the conversation could be around assignment design, resource needs, so whether learning materials or tools students would need to use in order to complete assignments, potential accessibility barriers, as well as how students will be invited to participate, how to create learning environments that are culturally responsive, how content and materials will be shared, or assessment. Regarding strategies for asking questions, here are some considerations that can help build rapport. Try asking open-ended questions to encourage faculty to reflect and feel confident sharing their successes and concerns. Be flexible with moving back and forth between specific and broader questions to help avoid any potential assumptions. Utilize follow-up question techniques such as, "That's really interesting. Can you tell me more about that?" Or engage in active listening, paying attention to any nonverbal cues your conversation partner may be exhibiting. And be sure to follow up with the faculty member in a timely manner using an appropriate medium, highlighting at least one item from the conversation that you found particularly memorable. For examples of specific questions, and to more generally help librarians prepare for having conversations with faculty about open pedagogical practices, I can offer this toolkit. Created as part of my Spark Open Education Leadership Fellowship capstone project, this toolkit was designed to help librarians support faculty at various stages of an OER-based project. While it is geared toward my library and its OER Incentive Award program, the toolkit can be applied to and remixed for most contexts. The toolkit focuses on providing support at 6 stages of an OER-based project, from identifying, evaluating, and adapting OER to developing renewable assignments and strategies for finding like-minded peers with whom to share stories. Comprised of conversation starters, outreach sound bites, informational resources, teaching materials, and reflective questions for librarians themselves, the toolkit is modular and can be easily reframed to help support librarians or other OER advocates who assist faculty in developing courses and assignments using open educational resources. Now, as I begin to wrap up this presentation, consider other ways to promote open pedagogical approaches via your library's initiatives and/or events, like incorporating open pedagogical practices into your OER Incentive Award program, and perhaps as its own award category. Establishing a community of practice with faculty, staff, and maybe even students to continue dialogue. Partnering with campus stakeholders to provide professional development and/or continuing education opportunities for faculty. Hosting events that draw in students and faculty with their classes. And consider coordinating these events with Open Education Week, Open Access Week, Public Domain Day, study days, finals, or whenever best fits your local context. Thank you for attending this session. These slides are available online, and I'm happy to take questions at this time or via email. Take care, stay safe, and stay healthy.